Hello everybody and welcome to another video on the Pole Position YouTube channel. In this video we are going to be previewing round 3 of the 2021 F1 season. Round 3 is taking place in Portugal, or Portimão, where it's one of the newer tracks. Like we said, we had the track last year as one of the ones that was announced during the season because other races couldn't take place, but it was actually one of the better races. The sort of the first couple of laps were absolutely insane. You could see the tyres being struggled to warm up. There were sort of things going on. Lewis Hamilton went back down the order, but then obviously managed to win the race. So it wasn't eventful. There was things going on in the Portuguese Grand Prix, and obviously we've got it again this year. So I will be previewing that and looking at some of the key points from the last Grand Prix at Imola and if they're going to take effect at this one. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So I think obviously that the main point going into the Portuguese Grand Prix at Portimão is the Valtteri Bottas and George Russell fallout. Now obviously we know there was a huge incident between George Russell and Valtteri Bottas at Imola in the last race weekend, where they collided on turn 2 really, turn 1, turn 2, and neither of them were very happy with each other after the incident. George Russell obviously went over and had a bit of a go at Valtteri Bottas. Bottas didn't hear him and ended up giving him the middle finger. So it was all a bit sort of not nice between the two drivers that are in the Mercedes program. Obviously Toto Wolff wasn't happy because the cost cap has come in and sort of affected Mercedes the most because they've been the better team throughout the last few seasons, and obviously having almost a full car to configure hasn't been the best for their budget. So he's already saying that it might affect going into 2022, but it wasn't a very good thing because both of them are Mercedes drivers in that Mercedes program, and it wasn't great really for them to collide and sort of cause the issue. I don't think it will cause such a problem in the actual race format, because it should be the case really on the Portuguese track that the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas are nowhere near the Williams of George Russell. Obviously, we might have said the same thing last round of the championship in Imola, but I still think like this time round Bottas and Hamilton shouldn't really be anywhere near George Russell. So I don't think it will cause an effect on the track. It's whether or not they've decided to speak to each other between now, or if they sit down before the race or before qualifying and have a bit of discussion. Obviously George Russell put out a apologetic social media post and said he shouldn't be doing things like that, but of course he's learnt from this mistake he's made at Imola. Bottas hasn't put anything out in regards to it. I think he's just tried to ignore it. Obviously he didn't take any of the blame for it. He said it was all down to George Russell. So I think it'd be interesting if they sit down maybe with Toto Wolff before the actual qualifying and racing takes place this weekend, and just sort of iron it out. I think I'd like to do that if I was a racing driver. I think obviously it's all okay if you just sort of push it under the rug, but I think ultimately you maybe need to speak to the other driver and just say, look, let's just forget about it, let's just move on and go on to this next race weekend. But I don't think it should fall out into the actual race or qualifying, because honestly I think the Williams have made great improvements, which we have seen, and they should have taken points at Imola, but I think the Mercedes should be too far away for them to be really pushing against George Russell this race weekend. But who knows, probably would have said that about Imola, and look where that ended up. So I don't think it will be an effect, but it's certainly something to watch between George Russell and Valtteri Bottas this race weekend. And another point is, can Lando Norris continue this fantastic form? I said this on the recent podcast to Jamie. He thought he'd already made strides over the 2020 season, and that's correct. He had, but I think the start of this season, Lando Norris has just really shown that he's gone up a gear in terms of his performances. Obviously he battled Carlos Sainz fantastically well over these 2 years and proved why he deserves to have that McLaren seat. I know I'm going to go into Daniel Ricciardo in the next point, but I think Lando Norris has just taken it up to that next level, and obviously getting a podium again already. It's just looking good. That McLaren team are looking good. They're looking gelled. It looks like that structure that Zach Brown and Andreas Seidel have been putting together over the last few seasons is starting to gel, and I think they're gonna have some fight with Ferrari this season about who finishes finished third in the actual Constructors' Championship. But I think the way that they've started, McLaren are looking on top form. So yeah, watch out for Norris. I think he's proved himself that he's going to be one of the top runners. If any of the other drivers in Mercedes or Red Bull make a mistake, Lando Norris I think is going to be there to pounce. So I hope that form might continue into this race weekend. So keep an eye out for that. And then one of the main other points is just some pressure in terms of the big names in teams that have moved or drivers that have moved to other teams during the winter break. Obviously, like I said, I've just mentioned Lando Norris doing excellent in the McLaren this season. Daniel Ricciardo has struggled in the first couple of races, really. Obviously let his teammate by in Imola to obviously get faster, because he was a faster driver at that point in the McLaren. Norris was just much quicker. Again, you've got another one of Sebastian Vettel who's struggling against Lance Stroll at Aston Martin. I think Alpine, Fernando Alonso is sort of struggling compared to his teammate Esteban Ocon. So I think obviously these are big name drivers: Daniel Ricciardo, Sebastian Vettel, Fernando Alonso. But Sergio Perez is another one I haven't mentioned. He seems to be struggling as well. I know that probably the wet track conditions didn't help him in his resurgence going through in Red Bull compared to in Imola, compared to what he had in Bahrain, starting from the back of the grid. But I think these big name drivers are sort of having to come to terms with being in that new team and completely new setup. Perez has had all them years at Racing Point or Force India. Now he's been dropped into Red Bull and he's got to learn that. Sebastian Vettel's another one, had all them years at Ferrari. He's now been dropped in a completely different setup at Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso's had some time out. Daniel Ricciardo's gone from Red Bull to Renault to McLaren. So again, he's having to get used to a new setup. So I think that does take an effect. We may give it a couple more races just to get them used to the circuit. I think drivers maybe take 4 or 5 races to really dial themselves up into the actual season. Obviously, it's a long season to now get used to everything before the season continues. But yeah, I think we've got to give them maybe 2 more races, and then the pressure really does start building. But news outlets are already talking about how the pressure's building on these main drivers. I think we'd still have to give them time because their teammates have obviously had more driver time in their cars. But yeah, these big names, there is a little bit of pressure on them, so keep an eye out, see if any of them actually improve over this race weekend at Portugal. And yet there's just some of the points to look for in this up-and-coming Portuguese Grand Prix. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you think is going to win the Portuguese Grand Prix? I still have a hope on Max Verstappen or Sergio Perez winning the race. I think that would be tasty if Red Bull win this third race in the championship running. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Who do you think is going to win the race? Who do you think is going to be on pole on Saturday during qualifying? Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really does mean a lot. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care. See you soon.